Welcome back. I'm Corinne Gregory Sharp, the Shipboard Chef. We're going to do another exciting episode today of Cooking with the Shipboard Chef. I hope you enjoyed what we did in the last episode. It's always been a really, really big hit to make these hot French puffs, also known as gougères. One of the things that I'd like to do is kind of impress upon you that we can make some really, really spectacular meals with few ingredients. If you recall, we only had 5 ingredients last week when we did the gougères. Today's recipe is only going to have 6 ingredients, and you're not going to miss for flavor. I can absolutely guarantee that. So what we're going to do today is we did an appetizer last time. This time I think we're going to do an entree, and I'm going to share one very special one that's also out of the cookbook, and I hope you're going to have fun following along. So today we're going to be working with boneless, skinless chicken breasts. Nice, healthy option for us. One of the things that's typical for a lot of people when they make boneless, skinless chicken breasts is they end up making it dry. There's a little bit of a balance between dry and undercooked, and you definitely don't want undercooked poultry. Now, something I have to point out is if you take a look at these chicken breasts, you'll notice they're not the same size, right? But for this particular recipe, and any recipe really that you're working on, you want to make sure that your proteins are the same size, or that you can compensate for a thicker cut versus a thinner. We're going to make it simple. We're going to make these be the same size. And the first thing I'm going to do is do a little bit of trimming here because it's got some extra fat on it. And also make sure that there's no, well, you know what? We're not going to use this one, so let's just put him away, or her. So I want to take off a little extra fat because it's not very pretty, and it's pretty easy to do. I'll just cut that off. Next, what I'm going to do is, in this case, I'm just going to cut these guys in half, and we're going to work with them that way. Okay? So, one of the things we're going to do today, I have this secret ingredient. Really, you're going to be impressed. Prosciutto. I don't know how often you use prosciutto, but it is an absolute key to this recipe because it imparts so much flavor, and a little bit goes a long way. So it's really exciting to use an ingredient like this, and I'm going to use it maybe a little bit different than you're used to. But watch what we're going to do. First thing we have to do is we're actually going to wrap our chicken in the prosciutto. And in order to do that, we have to make sure this chicken is absolutely dry. The prosciutto will not stick the way we want it to if our chicken isn't dry. Of course, the easiest way to do that, paper towel. So I'd previously already washed these guys, and they were ready to go, but I hadn't dried them, so now I'm going to dry them just so that you can see what I'm doing. Okay. My chickens are dry. So you can see prosciutto is super thin. If you haven't worked with it, it's kind of good news and bad news because it's super thin. Very often, the delis or wherever you get them from will put a piece of paper or plastic in between, which is really kind of nice because you can use that to peel away the prosciutto. I don't have that in this case, which is okay. It's coming off pretty nicely. But one of the things I've learned is prosciutto is super forgiving. So if it turns out that you can't get your prosciutto to peel off properly, you can always kind of reassemble it. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to lay 2 pieces of prosciutto on my board. I'm going to take my chicken. By the way, if the piece of chicken is really small, you can get away with 1. I like being a little bit luxurious. So I'm going to put a little salt and pepper on my chicken. You want to be careful with the salt in this recipe. Prosciutto is inherently salty, and if you end up over-salting your chicken, even though protein likes salt, you're going to get all that salt from the prosciutto already, and your sauce is going to be really salty, so be careful. All right, so I'm going to start presentation side up, which means the good side of the chicken, and I'm just simply going to tightly roll it into the prosciutto. See how that's gone? And it is sticking because I have a dry piece of chicken. See how nice that looks? We're going to do that with another piece. Okay, let's do our second piece of chicken. Oh, it's picked up a little bit of fat I don't like. So there we go, setting him down. I guess it could be a her. I don't know. Her, him. And we're going to roll it up tightly, making sure that we pick up our little pieces of prosciutto. And there you go. One more time. Good? I think you can do this. So while I'm prepping the last 2 chicken breast pieces, I want to point something out. You notice I'm not using gloves, but I keep touching my salt and pepper shakers. You got to be careful with chicken. Chicken can give you all sorts of nasties, particularly salmonella. So anytime I work with a chicken or a fish, even sometimes depending on how I feel about the meat, I will go back afterwards and with disinfectant wipes, wipe all this down. Because you really, really want to be careful of not contaminating your food. So same thing with cooking chicken. There is an FDA prescribed temperature that we want to cook chicken to, and I'm going to show you how we're going to use that later on when we cook our chicken. Okay. We're ready to cook the chicken. First thing I'm going to do is put a little bit of oil in a nonstick pan. You'll really have much better success, trust me, if you use a nonstick. So we're going to heat this oil over medium heat. And as soon as that pan is hot, which will be very soon, we're going to put the first piece of chicken in. And it's very important how we place the chicken. And I'll show you why in a minute. You'll notice this chicken has a seam of prosciutto right there. We want to make sure that this prosciutto seals onto the chicken. And in order to do that, we're going to start it basically seam side down. Okay, so we're about ready to put our chicken down. And here we are, seam side down. There it goes. 1. Again, notice where the seam is. 2. Another one. 3. Now I am going to cook these on all sides, so it's just to get the initial seed just adhered to the chicken. And there we go. All 4 pieces of chicken in the pan. What's next? Wait and find out. Okay, as you see, our little chickens are starting to brown. I'm going to flip them over. Oh, look at that. Aren't they just pretty? So I didn't explain this earlier, but if you're familiar with the dish veal saltimbocca, which is basically a veal topped with a piece of prosciutto, sometimes they put cheese on it, and it has sage butter sauce. This is what I'm kind of doing with this chicken breast, only in this case, it's wrapping it around for presentation. So it's absolutely gorgeous. It also helps keep the meat tender and moist. Okay, so as you see, we've done a nice job of browning all sides of the prosciutto on the chicken. And, you know, as we wanted, it's sticking nicely. So right now what I have to do is I have to take it out of this pan because there's no way it's going to cook, you know, completely through without it scorching the prosciutto. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove it to a cookie sheet and pop it in the oven and it can finish cooking there. Remember, we need FDA temperature. No food poisoning on my show. All right. One more really key ingredient in this is sage. I don't know how much you use sage in your cooking, but it's absolutely fabulous. It gives so much flavor. You don't need a bunch. Oh, it smells so good. So for this recipe, we are going to use this for our sauce. Like I said, saltimbocca usually takes pieces of sage and sandwiches under the prosciutto. We're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to incorporate this in our sauce. Now, you have a couple things you can do. So I like to, I don't know if you're familiar with chiffonade, but the idea is that, like with basil, you'll roll it and you cut super, super thin slices, and then you can go ahead and drizzle that in your sauce. If you don't want to go that hassle, I mean, it's not hard, but if you don't want to go to that hassle, then why not just go ahead and chop it finely? It'll work fine. The taste will be great. But I just wanted to show you what this looks like. Oh yeah, keep your fingers out of the way. Important knife skill. So, see how these are little shreds? I'm actually going to chop through them because when you get a big bite of sage, it's very noticeable. So I want little bites of sage. See? Sage confetti. Okay, so now, while the chicken is cooking, we can make our sauce. So one of the absolute beauties of sauces like this, when you are sauteing in a pan, is you get all these nice little brown little bits. And we're going to use that as a flavor element because the brown bits have all the flavor. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to melt some butter in this pan. And I have to be honest, there's a funny thing about this sauce. It doesn't matter how much I make. it's never enough. So in my cookbook, I have a 1x sauce, but most of the time, even when I make 2x, it's not enough. So depending on how much sauce you like, actual mileage may vary. Adjust your proportions and ingredients, and you'll be happy. Okay, so we're melting the butter. And it's not really critical over what heat you melt it, because you're going to be paying attention to it, but just make sure that you're scraping all the yummy little brown bits out of your pan, because that's where a lot of the flavor is left. And I hate it. I really hate it when people leave the brown bits behind and go, oh, we're just going to go wash the pan. No, no, no. Flavor nuggets. Don't wash the pan. Use the flavor nuggets. Sorry, I get emotional about flavor nuggets. Okay, so you'll see that we've now got our little flavor nuggets. And the next thing I want to do is, remember that sage we did? We're going to throw that in the pan. Just stir that around a little bit. I love it when the sage hits the pan. Did any of you grow up with the Galloping Gourmet? Do you remember when he would be looking? I mean, I think we have to have smell-o-vision, because he would be talking about the garlic wafting, and I swear, even as a child, I could smell the garlic. I wish you could smell this sage. It's really good. Okay, so our final touch for this recipe, look how nice and foamy this is getting, is we're going to add a lemon juice to it. And this is going to be our lemon sage butter sauce. Doesn't that look yummy? Let that just cook a tiny little bit. Let it reduce. But not too much. We don't want to end up with not enough sauce. It's got a little bit of simmer going, which I like. Kill me now. All right, we'll let this reduce a tiny little bit. My chicken should be done pretty soon, and then we'll continue on with our rest of our dish. Okay, so we've had the chicken in for a little bit in the oven to finish off, and I want to make sure that you understand what we're doing as far as the temperature. So we're going to take the temperature of our chicken in the thickest part. So that one's about 148, 149. This one is 155. Now, I can pull this one. In fact, I will. I'm going to put it on a platter for warmth, because it's going to continue to cook for a few minutes while it rests. 166, that one's ready. 170, that one's ready too. So let's go ahead and put those little guys on a platter. Oh, look, I got more juice. How about we add that to our sauce? And I'm going to put this guy back in the oven for another probably 2 to 3 minutes, and then we'll take its temperature again. So our chicken is rested, and this is one of the important things about making sure the temperature is correct. And as you see, when I cut into it, it's juicy, but it's not pink, right? It's not undercooked. My prosciutto is hanging on really nicely. When I take these slices, it's absolutely beautiful. If you don't want to use the whole chicken, get back on there. You can always put it back. If you don't want to use the whole chicken breast, you can always leave little uncovered parts aside. But this is going to make a really nice presentation on the plate. So let's go on to the next part, and I'll show you how to finish this dish. Okay, final plating and presentation. So we're going to take our beautiful little pieces of chicken, and I'm just going to sort of fan them around my pasta. And see, again, we can tuck that in. Nobody's going to know that it's coming loose. And then we're going to take our sauce. We're just going to drizzle it on our chicken and on our pasta. And we will get a few extra little pieces of sage for flavor. And then finally, I like to add a little bit of fresh ground pepper. Right? So what do you think? So that's a wrap for tonight. I hope this plate really inspires you. You know, that's really what this is all about. It doesn't really matter if you're on a boat, where your galley is. Is it on the land? Is it on the water? Is it in Central Africa or on the west coast of the United States? We can really inspire each other with different techniques, different types of tips, different ingredients, and just think about how you can elevate your meals for your family, for your friends, for anybody that's in your life, because really we have food all in common. So, hope you'll join me next week for another episode with Cooking with the Shipboard Chef.